And welcome to this meeting of the Audit, Risk and Governance Committee being held on the 23rd of May 2022. Getting into the agenda, item 1, attendances and apologies, of which I have 2, being Ms Kelly Berry and Mr Randa Ruta. I would also like to move a motion in relation to the standing orders. As this meeting is being held electronically, I would like the committee to consider moving the following motion, being that under clause 18.1 of the Standing Orders Local Law 2002 as amended, the committee resolves to suspend for the duration of the meeting the following clauses. Clause 3.5, public question time, insofar as it relates to public statements. Clause 3.13, deputations. Clause 2, members to occupy own seats. Is there someone happy to move that motion?
Happy to move as stated.
Thank you. Moved Councillor Rich, seconded Ms Newby. Thank you. All in favour? Item is carried unanimously. In addition to the conduct for tonight, the pace of an e-meeting should be slow and orderly. The following practices will help avoid confusion and support effective e-meeting. Please speak clearly and slowly as connections be disrupted or delayed. Always state. Sorry, could I please ask that people turn off their microphones if they're not speaking? Always state your name to indicate to the presiding member that you wish to speak. Restate your name if the presiding member has not heard you at first. In debate, only speak after the presiding member has acknowledged you. Then please state your name so that others know who is speaking. Please follow the presiding member's directions and rulings. If you are unclear about what is happening in an e-meeting, immediately state your name to draw the presiding member's attention and enable you to seek clarification from the presiding member. Avoid looking for opportunities to call points of order. Instead, politely and respectfully gain the presiding member's attention and explain any deviation from your meeting procedures, the Local Government Act, or any other relevant matter. Participating electronically in a meeting, whether that meeting is electronic or a physical meeting, presents logistical challenges and can impact the effective conduct of the meeting. An electronic meeting is as effective as the worst connection to the meeting. In addition to behavioural protocols described above, participants should ensure that they have a stable connection to the meeting and are able to give the meeting their full and proper attention. To ensure the best connection possible, meeting participants are requested to turn off their camera and mute their microphone when not speaking. Thank you. Moving to agenda item 2, petitions and deputations, of which there is nil. Item 3, declaration of councillors and officers' interest, of which there is nil. Item 4, receipt of minutes or reports and consideration of adoption of recommendations from committee meetings held since the previous council meetings. 4.1, minutes of previous Audit, Risk and Governance Committee meetings. 4.1.1, Audit, Risk and Governance Committee meeting 28 February 2022. Could I have a mover in relation to those minutes being confirmed?
Happy to move, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rich, and Ms Newby, happy to second. Anyone opposed to the motion? Item is carried unanimously. Item 5, reports for consideration. 5.1, reports. 5.1.1, Strategic Risk Register Quarterly Review Report, May 2022. Are there any questions in relation to this item? Ms Newby, you have a question for this, or did you not put down your hand? Ms. Newby?
Sorry, I have a few questions.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Risk number 2, where this is the organisational workforce. We're 6 weeks now, or 5 weeks, I suppose, from a completion date of the 30th of June. I just was seeking confirmation that we are on track. That's for items 2 and 3.
Just, Ms. Newby, just bear with me. I'll just ask the minute taker, you're on the page at the moment relating to the previous meeting. Did you not catch the mover and seconder of that? Is that why we're stuck on that screen?
Sorry, Councillor Strange, on my screen I'm showing the first report, 5.1.1.
Oh, my bad. I apologise. I'm not looking at the wrong screen. two screens going. Okay, sorry. Could I ask the CEO provide a response to Ms. Newby?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Ms. Newby, are you referring to actions 2 and 3, which is develop an employee value proposition and review the performance appraisal system? Is that the 2 you're referring to?
Yes.
Yes. I might ask the Deputy CEO to respond to those, if I can.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, that's correct. We have just updated this register recently, and we're on track for both of those for 30 June 2022.
It's fine. Could I just make the comment too? It was great that you put a whole lot of the comments in this time, because I did the review and then I went through the comments. So I think it'll make this a lot quicker. Risk number 4, have we received any updates from the WAPC? And when has it been presented to council?
I might ask the Director of Development Services to respond to that question.
Certainly, thank you, Madam Presiding Member. So the risk pertaining to the progress of developed contribution plans for Byford and Mundajong, Amendments 208 and 209. I just wanted to clarify they're the ones Ms. Newby's asking about.
Correct.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so I guess reflecting on the fact that we did refer them in November 2020 for final adoption, it is regrettable that, nearly 18 months later, they're yet to be finally adopted. The last piece of correspondence we received was in early March, requesting further information from the Shire, and we turned that around within a week from memory. So the ball is back in their court, so to speak, and we're just continuing to follow up. We followed up with them again today, seeking an update. So yeah, the information shows that they are actively considering the amendments, because they are reaching out seeking clarification on certain items. I'm still confident that we will see some progress. 30th of June will be an aspirational target, and I like having a target because I'm able to refer back to the Planning Commission on that target as well. I'm saying how important this is for our strategic risk management across the organisation. So at this stage, I guess we're sticking with that target, and I'll certainly keep the committee updated.
I guess the comment about that is that I believe that the development in Mundajong is progressing. So this is becoming urgent, and I'm just wondering if there is anything we can do to speed it up, whether we have to make representations to the minister or something, because this is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, through the chair, the development in Mundajong, absolutely we have captured by legal agreement. So it would be very unfair for development to be pushed through awaiting the finalisation of a developed contribution plan. So for example, the development of Whitby Estate, they have signed up to a legal agreement back in 2015, which mandated that they would provide their required contributions once the developer contribution framework was in place. So we're not losing out at all. But the imperative is still the same. You know, we expended, you know, significant resources to get it through council, through the community. So we will continue to follow up with the Planning Commission. I think apart from just continuing to raise the importance of it, I guess I'm in the hands of the committee if there wants to be any sort of particular specific decision made about further work that or further approaches that can be made. But certainly we are doing everything we can from our administration to emphasise the importance of it and turn around their requests for information.
Oh, do we know that if other councils are having similar problems? Because if so, maybe Walker can make a representation. It's sort of a question, I suppose, or a comment.
Director, are you happy to answer that question? I guess before you do step in, I would just note in my experience that there is very little that local governments can do above and beyond what we at Serpentine Jarrahdale have done in terms of securing legal agreements in advance of these developer contributions. I haven't observed councils successfully pushing things through ahead of when the Commission decides to determine things.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Yeah, just to echo, we, I guess, find ourselves trying to maintain that supportive relationship with the Department for Planning, Lands and Heritage. You know, that it really is subject to their processes of decision making. The feedback I get from my colleague at the department is that you know, there is a significant resourcing challenge that they have. But I guess we will continue to, obviously, consistent with council's decision back in November 2020, we are doing everything we can to expedite it. The other glaring issue is the final draft of the new local planning scheme has been with them since June 2020, and that is still sitting yet to be determined by the Planning Commission and the Minister.
Okay. I guess then it remains a significant risk for us. Okay, risk 5. One of our controls is number 6, internal audits. Now, for the last 2 meetings, we have not seen an internal audit status report. So I'm just wondering what's happening with the implementation of that control.
Could I ask the CEO to respond to that question?
Certainly, Madam Presiding Member. I note that the internal auditor is present at today's meeting, but without going through personal issues in a committee meeting. We have had some. The internal auditor has been away from work and has had COVID and other issues. So we are working towards bringing internal audit updates to the next Audit, Risk and Governance Committee. We appreciate it's been some time, but we've had some issues internally with that and availability. So we're working towards the next meeting of that. I don't know if the Deputy CEO wants to add any more to that.
Thank you, through the chair. No, that's CEO, you've summarised that.
Thank you. Risk 12, look, this isn't a major thing. It's just a sort of, reading through the numbers. Our master plan is number 3. We're going to have the equine trails, got a completion date of the 31st of July. However, number 8 with the Jarrahdale equine trails is a completion date of the 30th of June. I would have thought that the Jarrahdale ones fell under the master plan. So I'm just wondering if the master plan, if the Jarrahdale one should be completed after we do the master plan, or if I misinterpreted that.
Could I ask that the Deputy CEO respond to that question?
Thank you through the chair. No, they're quite independent. So the existence of an equine trails network in Jarrahdale is captured through the master plan, but actually what number 8 refers to is the concept plan that we've been working in partnership with DBCA on in regards to the creation of some new equine trails in Jarrahdale. So what will be coming to council will be that concept plan and the next stage proposal from there. So I'm comfortable that they're running on a different timeline, but they won't be lost to each other.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Last one, promise. Number 14, which is about the emergency management. And we've got a lot about COVID in here, and we talk in other places about bushfires. I'm just wondering where in our risk management plan, whether it's under here, we consider other emergencies such as floods. And I know it's not we've not had them really here in the past, but we do have a lot of streams and creeks. And I know as I'm running around here now, been running more around Serpentine, I'm just noting that if we had the similar sort of rainfall as they had in the eastern states, we could have a serious problem. So I'm just wondering if we should be thinking about widening the emergency management to include other things. I mean, it might be other things. It might be a major road accident or, you know, chemical spill. It could be anything. I'm just wondering where we sort of have it in the plan, and I couldn't sort of find a spot for it, where it was.
I might ask the CEO to respond to that question.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. I think it's a good point, Ms Newby, that you raise. Could I request that we take that on notice and put that into consideration for the next update, because it might require some input from multiple parts of the organisation about where other risks might go, and we might come back to either amend or update or identify and emerging other risks at the next meeting, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's terrific. Thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Coles, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Lauren. I had several. Some have already been sort of spoken to by Ms Newby, but I guess my concern, and it's sort of amplified with the report into the Abernathy civil roadworks. I mean, you can suspect things, but it's not until you read it in black and white that the head starts spinning with incompetencies. What redundancy do we have? And already we've talked about almost blaming state government departments. We try and do things on track. We're waiting for state government departments to come back to us, but it's still not progressed or shown as an amber or red on our dashboard. So how do we get around that? And what redundancy do we have in relation to, you know, the comments being made, you know, the internal auditor is away, he's sick, he's got COVID. So what redundancy do we have in relation to the risks? Because obviously risks don't go away with one person being sick.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean in relation to what redundancy we have.
So redundancy, and I'm sure you understand what redundancy means, but if a particular person is unavailable, that particular person is on leave, that particular person is sick, that particular person has COVID, I would imagine that everything doesn't stop and fall away. I would imagine that there is some degree of redundancy, or if you don't like that term, some level of ensuring that the business still gets done without that person being present.
Might ask the CEO to respond to that question.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Presiding Member. I guess, Councillor Coles, that would be an ideal world where that was the case. We approach those issues on a risk assessment basis, but we're not a big enough organisation to have complete redundancy for every position. When people go on normal annual leave, even many positions either don't get filled or are filled by people acting in those roles. So we don't actually have a lot of capacity there when people are on leave. That's the sort of organisational capacity that we have. So happy to answer particular questions, but at a generic level, that's how that operates for us. We just are not of the size to have that capacity there.
But obviously, Paul, there is a succession plan, which I would think would be part of that redundancy. So if the one particular person was on leave, whether that was annual leave, sick leave or the like, there would be a succession plan so someone else steps up and carries on those functions and those roles while that other person is absent, I would imagine.
It depends. For some positions there is, but some positions no. It depends on the position, really, to be honest. Some positions which are discrete in nature and not generic, when those people are on leave and there's no capacity there, nothing progresses for that area. So if they're in a team and there's teams that can support them, it just depends on a case-by-case basis, to be honest. I'm happy to answer particular questions if you've got particular examples, but at a generic level, we're not a big enough organisation to have, many multiple people in different roles.
Sure. And I guess the other part of it, which I asked, which hasn't been answered yet, and it was two parts of my question, so for that I apologise. But and Miss Newbury alluded to it about, the planning and waiting on state government agencies. How do we mitigate that risk? Obviously, we don't abrogate our responsibilities and say we're waiting on other departments. So how do we reflect that accurately in the register and manage the risk in relation to that?
I might ask the CEO to respond to that question as well.
Yep, thanks, Madam Presiding Member, and thanks, Councillor Coles, for the second part of the question. Sorry, I missed it earlier on. I guess we are mitigating it and capturing it there as we think best. As the Director indicated, there's a lot. If you're talking about the example of the planning developer contributions, we've mitigated that by putting agreements in place with the developers as they develop lots in the absence of that, waiting for the state government to finalise the developer contribution plans. We continue to advocate for the state government with those. When they make inquiries, we respond to those in a timely manner. So I actually think we're doing an awful lot in that space. But, we can't make the state or force the state to consider matters at a quicker process. What we can do is put a range of strategies in place, as the Director has outlined, to mitigate those issues. And it's an issue that's being experienced by many local governments, I understand. And as the Director indicated, it's more about capacity rather than, a willingness to resolve the issues. It's about the state government's capacity to work through those issues. But that comes to this committee, and so if this committee has other suggestions of things that can be done, that's what the intent of the risk register is, and that's what the intent of the actions are. So if members of the committee have other suggestions, we are open to them.
Councillor Coles, does that adequately answer your question?
It does. Thanks, Lauren. Now, the next question I have, unless there's someone else who wants to ask a question, I'll pause to see if there's someone else.
Go ahead, Councillor Coles.
Thank you. The other question I have, and I guess it's probably to the CEO, and we spoke about it on the phone today, but it's obviously something separate but linked to this, in relation, I guess, as part of the organisational efficiency, and that's the reputational risk or the reputational damage potentially that we can have with the ratepayers, residents and the community for not doing the job in line with what the community expects. Is there a specific risk in relation to that, Mr. CEO, or is that just under the organisational efficiency?
Could I ask the CEO to respond to that? Is that the service level risk? I do believe we do have.
I'm not sure exactly. So the organisation is covered under a few, Councillor Coles. There's the organisational workforce. There's the organisational efficiency. It's probably the best area for that. Is that what you were seeking? I'm not exactly sure what your question is, to be honest.
The question is, one of the major risks is the reputational risk. So that the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale has a reputation for being a less than productive shire, and that can come from dealing with economic management. That can deal from dealing with residents, that can be from ratepayers, that can be from small business economic development. So overall, I would imagine that there is, and I think the presiding member alluded to it, and I think you're right, Mr. CEO, in relation to it's probably the risk 5 organisational efficiency. But I just want to make sure over a couple of things that have happened over the last couple of weeks, and certainly there's some negative comments made in the community. I'm just making sure we're aware of that, and it links straight back to our risk register, because I would imagine, notwithstanding the fact that we are a government body, I would say reputation does play a significant risk in relation to what we're trying to do. We're trying to attract investment. We're trying to attract investment. We're trying to attract economic interests and the like. Certainly, we want to be a shire that people want to come and live in. So I would imagine that would be a significant risk. So I guess my question is that captured efficiently and effectively within this risk strategy framework?
I would ask the CEO to respond. Yep.
Well, from an officer point of view, Councillor Coles, it is, but I guess that's up to the committee to see whether that is, this is our suggestion to the committee. And if the committee has some changes they'd like to see made, this is a good time to raise those, or to ask them to be looked into, or to come back to them. As staff, we are happy with those risks and the way they are captured. But this is the Audit, Risk and Governance Committee, so this is the committee making recommendations to the council about the register.
And I guess there's a fine line between people not getting their own way in the community, and then they say that there's an issue with the shire, and that may well be the vocal minority. But I guess that's the challenge for us as a shire, and specifically for this committee, to ensure that reputational risk is mitigated. So, and there's probably people in the committee that have more experience in these matters than I do. But it's just something that's really come to the fore of my thinking over the last couple of weeks, with some things that have happened, and certainly in relation to, and it may well be something as simple as advertising or promoting the decisions that we make, so the decisions that are made are actually understood by the wider audience. And I think that's probably the answer. But I'll have a think, and as I said, there are people in this committee that are more advanced and intelligent than me at these matters. So thanks for the time, Mr. CEO and presiding member.
Perhaps if I can just add, Madam Presiding Member, to Councillor Coles' point, I guess that this is not the only mechanism we have for capturing those sort of issues, or understanding whether in fact they are, community-wide or widespread. We do our biannual community survey. We're doing a stakeholder management plan now. So this is not the only piece of the jigsaw puzzle that, tells us how we're performing as an organisation, and there are other forums which capture that or provide an opportunity for the community to have feedback on our performance. So maybe that's something to think about as well.
Councillor Coles, are you happy with that response?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that I think the CEO's nailed it there with those surveys. And again, it may well be the vocal minority, but we just don't know unless we go out there and engage with the community. And I think, the example being meetings being held remotely and the community not being involved and not being told, I think that is a particular risk. But it's probably not the place to talk about that. So I've said my piece, and I think moving forward, there's some opportunities for us to improve in that regard.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Ms. Newby, you have another question?
Well, I was just leading on from what Rob had said. I think reputational risks underlies a lot of these specific risks, because, like even financial sustainability could be, our reputational risk could go down the drain if we don't achieve all these different risks. So I think it's an inherent risk which is floating out there, sort of behind it. And I don't know if it's something we can put on a risk register, but it's probably something we should be conscious of. And part of it comes from the way we respond to complaints, I would have thought. That's a comment, I'm not making a question. But just further on from that, talking about reputational risk, it did occur to me, although we're going to discuss it separately with the report on Abernathy Road, under risk 16, we have a control procurement strategies as a control, but I'm wondering if we should be putting the contract management as an added action on risk 16, because although we have strategies, we're actually going to go through and update those strategies and change them. So and because this is a high priority, and I agree, Rob, things like reputational risk are bound around a lot of reputational risk rests on capital projects. But I'm not saying we should mention reputational risk separately, but surely we need to add what we're going to be doing with the purchasing and contractual side, expand it out and have it as an action under risk 16. I guess we can talk about it more when we go to the other thing, but we've got as a control procurement strategies when we're going through and updating them. I don't think it's a completed action that's a control. I'm just asking the staff to respond on that, whether they feel it's.
Ms. Newby, are you proposing to add that modification to the strategic risk register?
Yes, yes, I think it should be, because it is a work in progress. But we can talk about it when we talk about, the recommendations in it. But it certainly is it's a major risk, because our procurement strategies clearly didn't work well. They didn't work as well as they could have with that contract. So there's something we have to improve the control, which is an action. So we don't have an action under number 16 to do that.
Madam Chair, it's Fraser. Could I chime in at this time?
Thank you, Fraser.
Ms. Newby, just at the most recent council meeting, council has adopted a new contract management policy, the first one that the Shire has had, and it, in fact, is well down the track of implementing a project management office, which will have oversight of all of these contract and procurement issues. So perhaps we could add the development of the PMO office to a control, because that would more broadly capture all of these procurement and contract management issues.
Ms. Newby, would you be happy with that approach?
Yeah, is it a control at the moment, or is it still an action that we're undertaking?
Director of Corporate Services?
Well, I don't see the word project management office there. It's just procurement strategies are general. And so we perhaps could be more specific.
Ms. Newby, would you like to move that recommendation with the modification to the strategic risk register?
Yes, I will.
Before we do that, sorry, Councillor Coles, do you have another question?
Oh, no, sorry. I'll take it.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Newby, you're happy to move the officer's recommendation with a slight change to note that additional control. Fraser, could you help with the wording? Sorry, Director of Corporate Services.
Sure, one moment. I just need to get my... Okay, so if we could add a point 3. Council, add project management office to a control in risk 16. Perhaps as a control rather than to a control.
Are you saying, like number 8, is it control 8, or are you saying action 3? Do we have a target date for this?
So 30 June. So, well, the project management framework has been designed and is currently being built in OneCom, and we have adopted, the council has adopted the first policy. It is anticipated that the PMO office will be functional within the OneCom system by 30 June. So,
So we're having it as a control 8.
so I guess on a very technical, it could be an action to be performed, but we are so close to actually having it in place. Let's stick. So perhaps rather than have it as a control, as a action in risk 16.
And then it'll move into an action when.
Yeah, into a control once it's complete.
Happy to second, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rich. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 5.1.
Sorry, Madam President. Sorry, presiding member. While it is fairly clear, we do need a reason for the difference from the officer's recommendation.
Ms. Newby, would you like to add the reason?
The reason. The reason that we're adding it is it's going to be, well, it's been approved by the council that we undertake this work, that this work be undertaken.
Perhaps if I
Is
can
that
help,
correct?
would you like some assistance, Ms. Newby?
Please.
Perhaps the reason should be to capture the work being undertaken in the development and implementation of the project management office.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Project management office, implementation of the project management office, Unit Secretary. You happy with that, Ms. Newby?
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 5.1.2, consideration to review risk appetite. Are there any questions in relation to this item? Ms. Newby?
Sorry, I was on mute. The first one, look, this is just, I think it's just a date thing, but I think it's important. R1 has stage 1 being completed in June 2022, but in R9 we talk about July. Now, as it's going out in next year's budget, not this year's budget, I wonder if that date in R1 should be July.
Could I ask that the CEO respond to the question?
Ms. Newby, can you just direct me to where you're referring
Yes.
to? I'm just...
R1, this is the recommendations officer response.
Oh, this is, are you referring to the Abernethy Road inquiry?
Yes.
We're on 512, which is consideration.
Oh, sorry, I've jumped way ahead, have I?
It's okay. I was confused myself, but
sorry, yeah, I've completely confused myself as well.
Thank you.
Happy to move the officer's recommendation, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Rich. Ms. Newby, you happy to second?
Correct.
Anyone opposed to the motion for item 5.1.2? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 5.1.3, Abernethy Road Inquiry Report Findings in Response to Recommendations. Ms. Newby?
I just lost my, Sorry, I just lost my mouse then too. Goodness me, it's all happening here. Yes, on the recommendations, R1, which is on, it's attachment 2. Just on the recommendations, it was just that on that R1 on the right-hand side, timeline for implementation. I know we've got June 22 there, but in R9 we talk about July, and I'll just be a bit pedantic, purely because it's coming out of next year's budget, not this year. In R9, it says is being conducted in stages, with stage 1 being completed in July 2022, which is next year's budget. That was all. I just thought those two dates should be the same. I think July should be the date.
Through the chair, I can field that one if I may. The correct date should read June 2022 for both R1 and for R9.
Even though it's coming out of next year's budget?
Correct. So the implementation of the project management framework is being conducted in stages. The first stage is going to be completed by the end of this financial year. There is further work to be done in terms of the implementation of that framework, which will occur in subsequent financial years. But I would defer to my more senior colleagues to explain that further.
Would that be appropriate for the Director of Corporate Services to respond further?
Really, there's not more to add. Well, certainly the full extension of the project management office into project lifecycle management and project optimization work will extend for some significant period into the future. However, there is a commitment in the long-term financial plan for that expenditure to take place. So I don't. We need to make plans. I think this is fine.
Okay, that's fine. So if they're both July, that's both June. That's fine. My second question was just in response to number 2, and talking about having a minimum price. This is where you have a low tender policy to formalise a low tender policy. The low tender, it says here, while acknowledging, I'm under the officer response notes, it said, while acknowledging the rationale behind the recommendation, a blanket low tender policy that would prevent the selection panel from considering a bid that did not meet a minimum price is not supported. And I would agree, because sometimes people come up with innovative ways to do things. That it might be below that minimum price. So I was just wondering about that. I mean, if you write a policy, it says to avoid bid low, recover later. That's why they're trying to do it. But all I'm saying is that I endorse what you're saying, because I think that just because a bid's low doesn't necessarily mean it should be excluded. I just found that an unusual recommendation. You're always suspicious about low bids, but there are legitimate reasons why a bid might be low.
So can I take that as a comment, Ms. Newby?
I think so, but it's just that because you've got here that you're going to investigate it further. It is a recommendation that's come up from the out of the report. So if you're doing something and the staff and the officers are making a recommendation against something directly in the report, I just wanted to say that we did support it. Well, I do. I support them, what the officer's saying.
Madam Chair, could I just jump in there, please? So there's two aspects or two reasons why the officers don't support that. Chiefly being that we already have a separation of the assessment of the qualitative aspect of tenders before the price is revealed to the panel. So really the price is a secondary determinant. And then on a second level, all of these, before the agenda is obviously released to council, it is reviewed by the executive team quite thoroughly. And the idea of a low tender is something that we do routinely reflect upon in that process as well. So, but not to say that there is potential for improvement in our journey of continuous improvement. So we'll have a look. We'll see what others are doing.
Ms. Newby, do you have any further questions?
No.
Are there any other questions? Ms. Newby, are you happy to move the officer's recommendation with the change to the date
Yes.
account for?
Yes.
Dr. Parker, can you suggest the wording for the slight modification?
I just want direct presiding member to raised hand in the.
Oh,
Just.
Sorry, Councillor Coles, I didn't see your hand.
That's okay. I'm a few kilometres away, so I understand you can't see it. I guess it's just a question in relation to the findings. It seems to me that there's a sense of people involved have now left, and a lot of the inquiry, if not all of it, was done via a desktop type scenario. I guess, is that of concern in relation to the recommendations? Is there anything else that could have been done in terms of the scope or the terms of reference that could have made this report a little bit more thorough and a little bit more intrusive?
I ask the CEO to respond to your question.
Thanks, Madam Presiding Member. I guess, Councillor Coles, the recommendations that have come from the consultants, improve the planning phase, better define procurement and project management frameworks, better documentation and knowledge management, better define delegation authority and roles, better stakeholder management. We feel like that we are, with the work we're doing now in the project management office, we're making improvements on our continuous improvement journey on that. I wouldn't say that we have all those done exceedingly well, but we're working on those. So in regards to what else could be done as part of the review, did you have something in particular in mind that could have been done? Not sure.
Sorry,
Mr.
Yeah, through the chair. I guess it was just, and again, this is probably my background and my suspicion, but the report says that it was a desktop review. A lot of the information wasn't, the people had left. I guess my question more specifically was the people that were involved, were they actually contacted by the inquirer? I guess there is no reason, or there's no, what's the word I'm after? They don't have to participate in the interviews or anything, but I guess in terms of the inquiry, bearing in mind this is ratepayers' money, and I know this would have cost tens of thousands of dollars to have been done. I would hate, the recommendations are sound, but I guess my question is, were the people involved that were in the Shire, were they interviewed? Were they spoken to? Was there a thorough investigation done in broad sense?
I understand your question now. Thank you very much. I'll ask Dr. Parker to respond to that question if I can, Madam Presiding Member.
Yes, please.
The short answer is no. The former employees and indeed the contractors that conducted the work were not contacted as part of the inquiry. That was based on a series of discussions between officers and the entity that conducted the works. My general observation regarding the conduct of the inquiry was that while their findings are what they are, that the issues that were identified were not of great surprise to those in the administration familiar with the project, given the maturity level of the organisation at the time.
Councillor Coles, have you a further question?
No, sorry, I was just going to say that they may, and I'll put on the record, they may not have been any great surprise to the staff. There was certainly no great surprise to council. There's certainly no great surprise to the residents and ratepayers. So I guess an inquiry that told us what we already knew. I just hope that it was money well. And I guess recommendations. That's really all I can say. Thank you. I'll take down my hand.
I think, Madam President, Madam Presiding Member, if I can add to that, just to address Councillor Coles' comments. I think what the inquiry has done for us is provided a bit of a roadmap and someone independent to review those issues. So, you know, they are not a great surprise, but it has also helped really target the areas for improvement. So that has been of assistance, I think, to us as an organisation. And, you know, depending how we move forward with those and how the council considers those, might provide a bit of a roadmap for us checking back in every so often to see that we actually are on the right track and continuing to implement those findings. I think it's been a useful exercise from my point of view.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Ms. Newby, are you happy to move the officer's recommendation with the additional notation about the date being changed in attachment?
Yes, I will.
Attachment 2?
Yes.
Dr. Parker, could you just assist with the wording of the amendment?
Sure. I think just in addition to notes the response to the Abernethy Road inquiry per attachment 2, noting that the project management framework implementation is scheduled to be completed in June 2022.
And that was in R9.
Nine, yeah.
R9. You can call it a typo or whatever. I don't know.
Can I have a seconder for the motion before us?
Happy to second, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rich. Is there anyone opposed to the motion?
Sorry, just on the wording, I think we do need to put that it's in R9 because it's mentioned in R1. It's mentioned in R9. I just think we need to put what ones it refers to in attachment 2.
Ms. Newby, are you happy with that addition that the minute secretary is?
Yeah.
And Councillor Rich is a
Councillor
secondary. Are you happy with the Councillor Rich? Are you happy with that it change as the seconder of the motion?
Yes, I'm happy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone opposed to the motion? The motion is carried unanimously. Given the time, it's 6:24 right now. We're scheduled to finish at 6:30. I guess in relation to item 5.1.4, are there any questions?
Madam Presiding Member, before we move on, can we just, I know it's pretty obvious as well, but for the sake of the minutes, can we just get a reason for the difference with the officer recommendation? I might be able to help Ms. Newby with the wording. It might be to ensure the wording in R9 is correct.
It's the same as R1.
It's the same as R1. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
You happy with that?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, Madam Presiding Member.
Yeah.
Item 5.1.4, Work Health and Safety Compliance Project. Are there any questions in relation to this item?
Yes.
Go ahead, Ms Newby.
Oh, right. I was just raising my hands. First of all, have the insurer seen this report?
Can I ask the CEO to respond to the question?
I might ask the Deputy CEO to answer the question, Madam President, if that's okay. Madam Presiding Member.
Thank you through the chair. No, we have not shared this report with the insurer.
Well, because we all have personal liabilities, if you like, in regard to this report, I'm feeling a little uncomfortable about the insurer not having seen this report, because it may affect things like our workers' comp and our liability insurance. So I'm just wondering if the officers are proposing to show it to the insurance company and discuss it with them, because they could possibly assist with it, by the way.
Could I ask the Deputy CEO to respond?
Thank you through the chair. Actually, sorry, on reflection, we haven't formally provided this report to the insurers. However, we do have a representative from LGIS, our insurers. He's our sort of our area representative who sits on our OHS committee. So he actually has seen this report. So our OHS committee, all members have seen this report, and he was shown that report as part of it and was able to have discussion with us at the OHS committee meeting. So there has been a representative of the insurers who has seen the report. However, we haven't formally written to the insurers saying here is a copy of the report. It hasn't been our intention to do that beyond what we have done at this point with his involvement.
If I can just add to that, Madam Presiding Member, that is that the advice that we have received as staff in how we implement the new work health and safety legislation through seminars the insurers have been part of organising along with WILGA is in fact to do this first step, to do an audit of the current arrangements and to identify areas for improvement and a bit of a roadmap to how that could be improved. So we're quite happy with the audit as a first step. If there was a particular aspect that Ms Newby was concerned about, happy to talk about that. I guess we are more broadly concerned about the new legislation itself and ensuring that we are doing everything we can to meet its obligations.
Look, it wasn't specific, but it's quite onerous, the legislation, but it's legislation, and I think that everyone on this committee, and I think the councillors as well, should be advised of their obligations. On finance committees that I'm on other boards, I've brought it to the board's attention. They've been, because directors are personally liable. And I'm just wondering if as part of this, if there's an education program for committee members like ourselves and for councillors as well on the implications of the legislation.
Ms Newby, would you like to add that as another point to the officer's recommendation?
Yes, I would.
I think the Deputy CEO wants to add something, Madam Presiding Member.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you through the chair. Internally, just for information for the committee, so internally for the staff, particularly for our senior staff, we have had an information session provided by our LGIS regional representative. So we've at least begun the journey of sharing this information with our senior staff, our leadership staff, and we'll be looking at how we ensure that we have some ongoing training in this space, because the the audit showed that, you know, there's probably a good opportunity here for us to increase the knowledge that our staff have in terms of their responsibilities in this area, and B, the legislation has some pretty significant changes in it, and C, we need to make sure that we've got a program that we communicate this to people as they're coming into the organisation and into those leadership positions in the organisation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There you go.
But we could, Madam Presiding Member, we could actually, even without a motion from the committee, we could actually add a session be held in the future for councillors and committee members' responsive roles and responsibilities. Deputy CEO, couldn't we? We could do one of those over the next few months.
Yes, thank you for the chair. We can arrange that.
Councillor Coles.
Oh, thanks, President. Member. I was happy to second Miss Newbury's motion, and I think it'd be remiss of us not to actually put this as a motion, notwithstanding what the staff have said. It's great the staff have had training, but how about the councillors and the committee members? As Miss Newby says, we are like a board, and other boards I'm on where things. So I think for councillors to be kept in the dark, it's bad enough it happens to us with other councillors, let alone by the staff. So I think it needs to be written as Miss Newby has alluded to.
So, Ms. Newby, could you word a point 7 in relation to the briefing of the committee in relation to its responsibilities?
Yes, I think the committee and the council needs to be. Let's say.
Can I help?
Yes, please. And information.
So what if we have something like request the CEO conduct or arrange a briefing for councillors and members of the Audit, Risk and Governance Committee on their roles and responsibilities in the new associated with the new legislation?
Yes, I think, do you have other committees though as well? Because members of committees can all be caught under this.
We do,
So,
yeah.
Because effectively we're kind of like volunteers. So we are all affected by it though.
Yeah. This is our only committee with external members on. The rest are all councillors and or their advisory groups and things like that.
Oh, well then just us then.
Yep.
Just us.
If we can add to the rest of that, Minute Secretary, on their roles and responsibilities associated with the new legislation?
Correct. I mean, that could be done. It can be done by a webinar or anything. It doesn't need to be face to face.
Associated with the new legislation?
The briefing covers that.
Councillor Coles, as a seconder, are you happy with that wording as well?
Yeah, I am. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Is there anyone opposed to the motion as it stands now? Motion is carried unanimously. Item 6, motions.
Sorry, Madam Presiding Member, and again, we need to have a reason for the difference in the officer recommendation.
I apologise.
That's okay. Ms. Newby, do you have some suggested wording you'd like there? Yep.
Yes, I do. I think, well, the councillors and committee members need to be aware of their responsibilities under the legislation.
Perfect.
I'll just say as an aside, I sit on a board where I have 3 district court judges and a senior counsel and a load of lawyers and me. So you can imagine what they think of this legislation.
I can imagine.
Thank you.
I can't repeat what they said.
Item 6, motions of which notice has been given, which says nil. Item 7, urgent business, of which there is nil. Item 8, closure. I declare this meeting closed at 6:35 p.m. Thank you for everyone
Thank
and
you.
your attendance
Thank you.
and great questions.